Hello and welcome to a Conquest battle report. In this game we'll be playing the Warlord versus Dweghom, and the scenario will be head to head. Although I'm not a Warlord player normally, and in fact this was the first time I have ever played Warlord, we were at the local game store on Friday evening games, and we only had 3 players there, and so one of them, Alex, allowed me to borrow their Warlord. And they helped me through how to play the army a little bit, taught me how chants work, and that is their Apex Predator on screen there. Lovely painted miniature in a very simple but very effective scheme, and it's super awesome. You can see more of Alex's Warlord on Goonhammer. They will be publishing a Warlord faction guide at some point in future, and basically if you see any red, black, and bone Warlord posted on Goonhammer, they're almost certainly Alex's, and they look awesome. So this is the list that I would be playing for this game. This is Alex's stuff that they had there for the evening, with a couple of exceptions. You will see some old Dominion miniatures on the field. They are proxies for the Predator's warband, but in short, here's what we have. Our first warband is the Chieftain. He is the Warlord. The Chieftain's Warlord ability gives the entire army shock for as long as he's on the field, and that is a very powerful, passive, and easy-to-use ability. There are a few good Warlord choices in Warlord, but the Chieftain's is by far the easiest to use. Shock is really good on a lot of Warlord stuff. Warlord are very fast as an army, and it's just kind of like easy and passive. It's a simple ability that you just have to remember, and if you remember it, it's good. The Chieftain has the artifact, I don't remember its name, but it makes him a fanatic, and he is a Tontorr rider. That combination is very powerful, and we'll see that during the game. The Tontorr follows the chant of Conquest, and the final tier of the Conquest chant is the most powerful of all of the tiers, basically. You can get some big numeric buffs out of every other chant, particularly if you are a fanatic in those chant, but the Conquest tier 3 chant lets you do things that would otherwise be impossible in the game. It is a massive threat extension, allowing you to march, charge, clash, or march, march, charge, and with something like a Tontorr, that is too powerful to pass up. So really the only other way to get that kind of like fanatic dinosaur is through a Matriarch Queen, is if she is the Warlord. Since she is not the Warlord, the Chieftain really wanted that ability. The Chieftain will also have, I think it's called Violence in Action, his Battle Mastery or whatever it's called, which allows him, when he's on a Tontorr, to grant any regiment within 8 inches, including his regiment, rules as written. That's actually a little contentious the way that it's worded, but as written I am relatively confident that he can grant Flurry to either him and his Tontorr, or to another regiment within 8. If he can't do that, it wouldn't have materially changed the game, and actually the ability to, I think Displacement is the other one, which gives double time. Giving double time to any regiment within 8 inches, actually I really like. So you could easily go either way on those masteries, and I think having now played this, although it's a little more subtle, the leaning into the speed of Warlord and the ability to let units march 3 times in a turn, or do something like march, shoot, march, march on the Predator could be powerful enough to just easily justify over the Flurry. Otherwise, we have 2 blooded units in these armies. They don't have standard bearers, but at 160 points they have Abominations, which gives the unit lethal demise. There are 15 wounds in that blooded unit, and they punch on very well, and lethal demise means that you can use them. 160 points is still cheap enough for a unit that if all it does is sit on an objective, that is okay. But with lethal demise, I can also use them to really efficiently fight quite a lot of like other things. So Dragon Slayers, for example. Blooded will not beat Dragon Slayers, but they will really cost Dragon Slayers to kill, and at 160 points that seems totally reasonable. And we have some healing in this list, which is very relevant. So we have a Matriarch Queen in the second warband, and she has the biggest warband. Now, she's 145 points because she is on the Brood of Omgorah, and that lets her join the Raptor Riders. The Raptor Riders have got nothing in them. There are relatively few attachments in this list, but that makes her a heavy regiment inside a very fast light regiment, which plays into the general Warlord theme of speed and gives me early game scoring in this list. Otherwise, she has a unit of Warbred, another Abomination unit of Blooded, and an Apex Predator. The model that Alex has is the Matriarch Queen on the Apex Predator, but they also have an Apex Queen in Raptor Riders that's nicely converted. So the Apex Predator that you'll see in this battle report, although it has a miniature riding it, it's not the Matriarch Queen. It is a naked Apex Predator, and I think I probably prefer that. Putting the Chieftain on the Tontorr rather than like in Blooded or something pays big dividends, but the Tontorr is ridiculously, grotesquely durable. It has something like 26 wounds and Oblivious. The Apex Predator is much more fragile. 14 wounds is less than like every Warlord unit, and that means that the Apex Predator, although it's fast and dangerous, really it needs to be played like the scavenger that T-Rexes are. The Apex Predator is like an emergency response piece. It uses its mobility, it uses the Cult of Conquest to get those March Charge clashes. It is to go places where it's needed and prey on the weak. It can't just hold a battle line, whereas the Tontorr can. And so because of that, I think I prefer the Matriarch Queen in maybe some infantry, but I really like her in Raptor Riders. There are a number of benefits to doing this, apart from the early scoring. Easily the biggest one is that the Raptor Riders are highly mobile, and the Matriarch Queen has a very, very strong healing ability in the form of To the Last Breath as a draw event, which as a draw event heals 4 wounds to a unit within 8 inches, which is, like, biomancers are envious of that, but you need to be able to actually get that ability out there, and the Raptor Riders are mobile enough. With Fluid Formation, you can even juggle the Matriarch's position inside the Raptor Riders, which, even if they don't otherwise move particularly much, lets her bounce either side with her high speed of the leader stand in the Raptor Riders in order to just change the radius that she's using that ability at. So I really like this as a combination. It is very expensive. This is a 400-point unit, but it will pay dividends. Finally, we have some Wardrune range. We have a naked Predator. I would like to have given something to him, but he doesn't really need it. He's a fine shooter. If I could have upgraded his gun, I would have, but it didn't really feel necessary, and I didn't have enough points. But he has the mastery that lets a unit, if it performs a volley as its second action, the unit can then perform a marked action, and he's going to go in Slingers. Slingers and Hunters both have Flint Knappers. Both of them are very good range units. They do very different things, and both of them have Flint Knappers. Slingers need Flint Knappers a little bit less, but the rerolls to 6 are still very nice on a unit with as high a volley stat as they have, and it will benefit the Predator. So overall, we have a list that is highly dangerous, highly maneuverable. It uses all of those chants to do all of the things that Wardrune do. And it plays into how I like to make a list, which is I don't like to put chaff units. I don't like to put blocking or holding units in lists. That's a weakness in how I build lists. Those are good things to have, but I like to not include them. I like to have, if possible, every single unit potentially dangerous or potentially do something, and these Blooded are a really good example of units I like that do that. Yes, I could pay 115 points, I think, something like that, for just a pleb unit of Braves, and that would be considerably cheaper, but the Blooded are much more dangerous and can trade into enemies and can do a lot more things other than just hold an objective. They can do that, but I've paid just enough extra to get some kind of like really serious capacity out of them if I need it. So here we have our Dweghom opponents list. This is played by local player Tom, who is an absolutely wonderful person. And I don't know everything that's in this list. In fact, I'm not 100% on the items, but I will go through what we do have in play here. So Dweghom have been kind of the boogeyman of the meta for a little while, and this is the kind of list. There are a few things in this that are a little off-kilter, but there are a lot of things in here that are like meta boogeyman elements. But I would say that since the change, I've actually had a couple of games where I've been watching Dweghom play against things, and I didn't pay 100% attention to how Dweghom were adjusted, and I've sat there and I've looked at like the amount of power tokens they have, and I've actually asked, like, shouldn't you have like 5 more power tokens than that? And it was finally in this game that I realized that they lost the free power tokens every turn, or at least according to Tom they have, and I have no reason to doubt him. He knows better than I do exactly how this stuff works. He is the Dweghom player. And now that you have to have the sorcerers on the field casting spells to get any tokens at all, yeah, those tokens are incredibly powerful. And if you're not prepared for the effect that they have, in particular, like if you're a new player, Alex has played some games into Dweghom, and they've just been like, I don't understand how you beat this faction. And that's a phenomenon I think Dweghom kind of have, where if you're a new player and you just push your big thing into the Dweghom, and the Dweghom player has like, I don't know, like 8 tokens at that point, and they spend 5 of them to just no-sell your big attack, and you go, how do I possibly beat this faction, as they collapse in on you and punish you for the overextension? But without the free tokens every single turn, they don't go into the like early game with enough of a reserve anymore to like consistently like hold off multiple attacks. They have to actually really carefully shepherd that resource, and it is still incredibly powerful, and they're still a very well statted army. Tom, for example, is currently assembling his Steelforged, and I am terrified because you just look at the pile of stats that is Steelforged, and it's like, defense 5, a bunch of wounds, a bunch of attacks, that seems really good. Oh, it's a medium regiment. And, you know, so Dweghom still have all of that going for them, but the like sheer back-breaking resiliency of the ability to auto-pass defense rolls, it still exists, but it isn't going to manifest as much. So with me ranting about Dweghom out of the way, let's look at the actual list. So totally unsurprisingly, Tempered Creed, despite everything I said, is still easily the most powerful army-wide ability in the game, probably, and we have a Tempered Sorcerer Warlord here to make full effect of it. He doesn't have much apart from, in fact, I think he just has Arcane Retinue 3. If you can, getting focused on him is very, very good, but Tom said that he couldn't afford it, and Arcane Retinue 3 is still enough to get all of your spells off and do some very big damage. He's using the Fire School, which you will basically always see because it has 3 offensive spells, and you know all of them, and you will shoot with 2 of them every single turn that you have range. And this guy is an absolute blaster. He's in a minimum unit of Fireforge, that is a medium regiment. They are very, very tough. They are dangerous at range. They are not strong in melee, but the thing about engaging them in melee is that if you engage them in melee and the Sorcerer can see you, and this will come up during the game, he will just explode you because he can cast the spells into melee provided he has line of sight. So this unit, although it is quote-unquote weak in melee, in the sense its defenses are very good, but it just doesn't do a lot of damage, the Sorcerer will blow you up. So this is a fantastic pairing. You will almost always see a Tempered Sorcerer in something like Fireforged, basically for this reason. If they're not riding a Hellbringer Drake. And I think the Warlord probably shouldn't be riding a Hellbringer Drake because they cast 2 spells a turn, and how much force multiplication you get to double dip on the benefits of things like your Arcane Retinue. Otherwise, we have a 6-strong unit, like a big, beefy unit of Hold Warriors. This is a little off meta, but the thing about Dweghom Warriors is that because of the attachments you can put in them, and this one has a Herald of Fire to give the entire regiment +1 attack and the command stand +2, Dweghom Warriors are actually one of those like lovely, perfectly dialed in units because they mainstay units. Everyone gets access to Dweghom Hold Warriors, and they can scale up and down. You can run them in units of 3 as like a medium holding unit, or you can run them in a big unit, and I love that. There are probably too few mainstay units like that exist in that Goldilocks zone, where you can run them small or you can run them large, and in this case, Tom is running this Hold Warrior unit large and juiced up. Standard Herald of Fire. Then we have Inferno Automata. I hate these. I hate them so much. They are really good, they are really fast, they are really dangerous, and we have 2 units of them. The second warband we have is another Tempered Sorcerer in a unit of Hold Ballistae. And this is actually a little innovation of Tom's that I really like. This Tempered Sorcerer is not using the Fire School. Instead, he's using the Magma School. Now, Fire School spells are more dangerous, but only kind of more dangerous. And the thing about the Magma School is that it's got 2 spells, and one of them creates hindering terrain, which is like, oh, that's kind of cool, I guess. And as you learn how to use hindering terrain, that can actually be really, really powerful. But the thing about that spell is that it targets the table. It does not need to be in range of an enemy unit. And because this Tempered Sorcerer is in Hold Ballistae, a light regiment who will turn up on turn 1, the Hold Ballistae can turn up and the Tempered Sorcerer can just start casting spells on the table in order to begin generating those power tokens, which means that as Tom rolls into turn 2 and turn 3 and turn 4, he'll have had some power there ready to spend to potentially blunt an Alpha Strike, even if the other Tempered Sorcerer has not yet been able to cast spells. Finally, we have a Hold Reg. The only thing I know that the Hold Reg has is maximum tactical retinue, so that he has flank, so that both he and the Dragon Slayers could potentially turn up on the 3rd turn. They won't in this game because the Warriors got brought on instead, but basically the Thanes will have flank. We then have a massive unit of Thanes. These are just Warriors ++. They are obviously considerably more expensive, but you could not really ask for more in a well-rounded heavy infantry unit. They have high defense, they have hardened, they have cleave, they have many attacks, they have good clash values. Thanes just great, that's what I want. That unit, that is just a good elite unit. Do they excel at anything in particular? No. Do they suffer against anything in particular? Also no. Not much easily fights Thanes, and that makes them excellent to put a Hold Reg in and run onto an objective. Finally, we have Dragon Slayers, 230 points with a Standard Bearer. Dragon Slayers are a premium blender unit. They can go after my beasts. I know that Tom will want to try and kill my Tontorr, for example. They just are big fighters. They're one of the very, very few Cleave 3 units in the entire game, and when they come onto the table, they are very hard to kill, and they are very tough, and they will fight and kill. One minor note before I forget, I think I said, now that I'm looking at this list, I think I said my Predator had no artifacts. That's not the case. He has a Sacred Censer, which makes him count as a Priest 1 for purposes of interference, and that is one of the few artifacts that I think is an auto-take in Wardrune, because interference is so important in just enough matchups, like if you're fighting Old Dominion, if you're fighting Dweghom, even to an extent if you're fighting like 100 Kingdoms some of the time, and even now that City-States Giants exist. Just having like some source of interference to protect your armies from stuff like this Sorcerer's spells can significantly reduce the casualties that you will take. And for 5 points, that is a bargain. It would not directly influence this game, but only because of a few things that happened, and I was very glad to have had it for 5 points, absolute bargain. Take that in your Wood Rune list if you have a slot to put it on any character that will be able to spread that aura of interference around. Okay, so 15 minutes of list analysis later, here we have our table. As a reminder, we are playing the off-balance scenario, not off-balance, head-to-head, which is honestly one of my favorite scenarios. It is really simple, but it is really, really good, and I think it plays to Conquest's strengths in that it lets you really use the reserves mechanic and all of the ways that reserves interact with the game in a just lovely and subtle and emergent kind of way. It's an excellent scenario. How it works, for those who haven't played it, is that we have a big 12-inch diameter, 6-inch radius, please ignore how terrible that circle is, scenario zone here, and then 2 smaller 6-inch scenario zones here. And both players can move into and take and control this zone for 3 points per round. And then on this side, you are trying to get all the way across the table to your opponent's small zone, which is worth 4 points per round. Now, in practice, it's going to be very rare, not impossible, but pretty rare for either player to get a lot of points off of these small zones. But what happens is this lovely emergent play happens where just, if you've got a light cavalry unit with a medium in it, or just a unit of, for example, blooded 160 points, and they just start making their way downtown, and your opponent has to respond to that because they can't let you put something on the home objective and just begin scoring those points. So you really do tend to have pressure that is exerted where you want to push this direction. Once you've put troops here, well, you may as well keep pushing towards this zone, and your opponent responds, but really then you have this big zone in the center that is where the big fight is happening, and it's basically very, very interesting. And because these zones are close enough to the flanks, you have reinforcement lines really come into play. In many scenarios in Conquest, they don't. In this game, they actually wouldn't, but they could have, and that's really cool. So beginning of the first turn, the only unit that I'm going to bring on my Slingers automatically and then roll, and my Hunters will turn up. And for Tom, he brings on his Magma Sorcerer in Ballistae, and I think both of his units of Automata turn up. And so basically Tom is going to push in this direction. We're going to have the Ballistae and Automata turn up here. I'm going to have my Slingers move aggressively towards this zone, and the Hunters are just going to move up here. Now, one of the really nice things about the list that I'm playing is that the Raptor Riders do not need to turn up on the first turn to score this zone on turn 2. Because Raptor Riders will be able to march, and then reform, I can catapult the Queen into the zone just by having them arrive on turn 2. And so they're actually going to be the unit that I will choose to bring on turn 2, but not on turn 1. I don't want to give Tom that information. I want to see what's going to go on, and I want to kind of just prepare the battlefield. I do have an overall plan for this game, which is that I want to kind of fight maybe in this space here. I want to use this big Wood Rune hut to hold my flanks and just prevent Tom from scoring here, but ideally draw a lot of his forces in without letting him score. And then I want to just hammer the Tontorr up here. I know that the Matriarch Queen is probably going to move in this direction and occupy this space here. So I want the Tontorr to barrel onto the board somewhere here, and then have units of Blooded supported where I can, and then the Slingers as dominant fire support into this space. Now, I am going to have some trouble in terms of terrain. We have obstructing and hindering forests, so you can't see through those, and then obscuring cornfields. The obscuration is actually going to cause me a lot of trouble over the course of the game, but I'm also going to get some use out of this one, putting Tom's range units between me and the cornfield between me and Tom's range units. So here we can see the battlefield at the end of turn 1, beginning of turn 2, and please pretend that these are Hunters, please pretend that these are Slingers with a Predator in them. These are the only proxies I will have during this game because Alex doesn't have those units in their collection yet. I think they have to assemble them. So as we can see, we have Inferno Automata here, and then we have the Magma Sorcerer, and this is a little residual marker. We can see that he's already generated one power token by throwing out some hindering terrain, and then the turn ends. So in turn 2, we're going to see our first conflict. I am going to bring on the Raptor Riders, but I think I'm going to get lucky and also have both Blooded and just rolling on 1s and 2s, also have Blooded and Warbred turn up, and I'm okay for them to turn up this turn. And they are going to move forward. They're going to start occupying this space here. I don't yet need to move anything up here because the Queen is going to turn up. Despite the fact that she appears on a 4+, I'm going to make her my choice to arrive this turn because she's the only unit that can get all the way from here, all the way up to there to score that zone. So we do have some action this turn, but what will basically happen is that Warbred will turn up here, Blooded will turn up here, Slingers will just keep marching forward. Unfortunately, like this, they're going to move to like this position here, and that is going to be awkward because they literally have a big cornfield in between them and the enemy. But I'm setting the reinforcement line here in case I need it, and the Matriarch Queen is going to move up here and then reform so that her unit is like that, and she is there inside range of this objective zone. The only violence that we will have this turn is that you can see this unit of Inferno Automata here. They're going to go for a charge into this unit of Hunters. Now, this is, even for very fast Automata, this is a long bomb. I think Tom needs a 4. They will reform first into like this position, move forward 8, and then they will fail the charge. Now, this is going to be one of 2 Inferno Automata charges that I am going to get very lucky with Tom failing, and it's going to significantly impact, or this one in particular will significantly impact the game, but it will also impact the game when something happens over here, which we'll get to. But that lets the Hunters just aim and shoot, and they will take off one of the stands of Inferno Automata. Hunters are fine shooting into Inferno Automata. They got Armor Piercing 1, Deadly Shot, perfectly suited for an aimed shot. I think one of these stands will end up being through obscuring terrain, but it's still plenty of shots, and it takes out one Inferno Automata. And I really like that, because it means that even if Tom gets to charge in next turn, he is significantly less likely to completely, like, because Aura of Death and attacks and impact, they can do a lot of damage to a very low defense unit like the Wadroon ranged units. And anything that whittles that down is going to be really beneficial for me. So 1 casualty, first blood, Tom's generating power tokens, let's move on. So here we are, beginning of turn 3, and we can see the wounded regiment of Inferno Automata. Everything of mine arrives this turn except for the Apex Predator. I'm going to bring on my Tontorr Chieftain automatically, and the Braves will arrive. And in Tom's case, he's going to choose to bring on his Warriors, and he's going to use Flank to choose to bring on his Thanes, and he'll roll 4 and not get the Dragon Slayers. And he's fine with that, because really the Dragon Slayers, they're going to use their role as a heavy regiment here, because they want to see whether things that where are they needed before they arrive. Oh, something I think I must have missed from last turn. In terms of medium regiments turning on, yep, we've got the Fireforge turn up here. I don't know if I mentioned that, but yes, they are the first onto the battlefield, and this is where they're going to appear. So something that's interesting around this deployment is that Dweghom can only project their power tokens from their sorcerers, and Tom's sorcerers are both kind of in the same spot. In particular, what he doesn't have is a sorcerer that's projecting power in this kind of area. If he gets right up next to this Wadroon hut, you know, obeying the sort of usual, like, don't come too close to it kind of restrictions, or you can't wheel, and there's a 1 inch, you have to not come within 1 inch of it, he can just about maybe squeeze some power through that. This is like this is about 8 inches, but it's very, very close. But this does mean that, like, any fights that are happening here, I don't have to worry about Dweghom power. Otherwise, my goal this turn is actually just to be kind of conservative. There are some very long threat range units. I have good range, but my Slingers are not quite in position to, like, monopolize on this. I want Tom to come into me. I'm scoring. I'm on 3 points right now, right? So if we look at, we put Wadroon points over here. Wadroon are on 3 already because I scored on turn 2. I don't need to rush. It's going to be difficult for Tom to contest this. In fact, he's very unlikely to contest this zone this turn, which means that I can wait. And because I can wait, I'm going to let him come into me and try and destroy his elements. And Tom, for his part, will respect that, and he will not mostly overcommit. We do have one big charge. By the way, just in terms of supremacy rolls, Tom will win every supremacy roll this entire game, defining win as getting what he wants. In the early game, he made me go first every turn, and in the late game, he's going to go first for the entire rest of the game. And so the first thing that happens is that we have these Inferno Automata clash in here. They reform, they charge, they make the charge, and they are going to basically kill one stand of... They're going to kill one stand of Hunters, and I think do 1 wound to another stand, which I'm totally fine with because that still lets me bring a stand back with the Matriarch Queen. I'm then going to have the Blooded Countercharge, so if we think about where so we've got the Inferno Automata there, a stand gets destroyed, that gives the Blooded capacity to slot perfectly into this space, and so they will wipe out with their attacks. I think I get a Famine chant on this. I'm mostly going to be playing with the Conquest chant. My warbands are Death, Death, Famine. I'm mostly looking to make sure that I can always do Conquest, and to chant Conquest you need 2 of any markers. But I'll have enough Death and Famine to be able to reliably get the first chant of either if I think I need it. To note, I spent about the first, it was at about this point in the game that I began to actually understand how chants worked. Thank you very much to Alex for their help in getting me through the first, a couple of turns. I do this, and do that, and reading the way that Parabellum have written the rules, it does ultimately make sense, but I swear that there has to be, there has to be a better way to have written those rules. Like, do you know that if you have a Conquest chant in the sequence, and then you chant the battle cry, the first thing you do is you remove the Conquest chant and replace it with another one, and then you chant your battle cry. And you need two different chants to chant Conquest, so you remove Conquest, replace it with something, so that you have different ones, so that you can chant Conquest. I don't know why it doesn't just say Conquest markers can be treated as any type of chant. There probably is a reason. They've playtested it. I assume there is a reason why it's written that way, but hot damn. Anyway, the only real action we're going to have this turn, apart from some shooting, is the Inferno Automata are going to charge in here, kill a stand, which I will subsequently heal back, and it will like end up back over here. And I'm going to be able to do that by using these Raptor Riders are going to end up in this like very stretched position where the Matriarch Queen is like, I have to get her to basically like exactly here, so that she's within 8 of the regiment and within 6 of the scenario zone. But I determined that it is exactly possible, and with fluid formation and 16 inches of marching, I can just do that. So we're going to get first blood by wiping out this Inferno Automata stand for effectively no casualties, which is really, really good. Yes, the Hunter Regiment is wounded, but they're not down any stands. Otherwise, I'm going to take a little bit of damage as these Ballistae move up, and they're going to start withering into these Warbred. These Inferno Automata are just going to begin advancing. This guy is just going to begin advancing. I'm going to stay out of his range for now. I don't want the Fire Sorcerer to cast many spells. And then otherwise, my Tontorr is going to show up here, my other Blooded will show up here, and the big unit of Thanes, totally unsurprisingly, will move on here. So we have a Tontorr Thane showdown happening, basically in the works, and that is a close matchup, although ultimately, I think it comes down to the winner of that matchup, and we'll see that in play, comes down to which unit is better supported. Alex had a game against Tom on the weekend previous, where their Tontorr had gone into the Thanes and there was ample dark power. Ample, not dark power, Old Dominion player speaking. Ample tempered power, elemental potency power, to let the Thanes weather through the Tontorr's attacks, and then Fireforge were in place to fire into the combat, and that swung it drastically against the Tontorr. In this case, the Tontorr would have the support of these Slingers, who would be able to, we'll see this maneuver in to get some shots, etc., and they wouldn't have elemental power, elemental potency from the Sorcerer, and that will make all of the difference. So here we are at the beginning of turn 4, and I've gone to 6 points because I once again scored this zone, and the Dweghom currently have, sorry, I'm not on 6 points, I'm on 8 points because I killed a regiment. So I'm on 8 points, currently 2-0. So we can see, like, that's a significant scoring lead. There are a lot of points in this scenario for killing characters and units and warbands, and the Warlord, etc. But this is a significant scoring lead, and I intend to just stay ahead, if possible, the entire game. Something we'll also notice, these Slingers are further back than they were before. That is because they took a shot and backed up using the fire and advance, in this case advance backwards, that the Predator has. So we're going to see a lot of conflict this turn, but a big thing that is going to happen is that I am going to get lucky. I'm going to call it lucky. I am going to, like, cards will line up in a way that I get to make a choice that is going to save me an awful lot of Orc lives. And that is because I've got 2 Blooded cards, and I'm going to have an opportunity to use one of them in a way that will really, really matter. So I'll break down the fights from right to left in terms of what goes on. Obviously, they don't occur in exactly that way, but it will make some sense of things. Over on this flank, we have just stuff happening. At some point during the turn, there's going to be some stuff happening over here. We will see in this turn, once again, the bad luck of Tom's Inferno Automata. They're actually going to attempt to make a charge across this direction at a unit that I will have in place over there, and they will fail it. And in failing it, they will break both themselves and the Hold Ballistae, which lets me very aggressively play with these Warbred. They're going to lose a stand, but they're going to cross the battlefield and just march charge into the Ballistae. And all I'm looking to do is hold them up there. And I do that safe in the knowledge that I'm not going to get flank charged and take significant damage for a turn because we have broken Inferno Automata. As noted, really, I'm just fighting a delaying action on this flank. I don't expect the Warbred to really do any damage. I want them to just do some. And it's time to basically set the line up here. We have this big unit of 6 Hold Warriors that has turned up in the previous turn. They're going to be marching in this direction, and I just want them, basically, I want them to stay away. The Apex Predator will turn up over here, and it will move on an intercept course, but it will wait on that intercept course, and it will not basically do anything until it has to, till it's ready to sell itself to stop the Hold Warriors from reaching this objective. In the center, we have a decisive moment, and this is early in this turn where I'm going to get lucky in terms of how I've ordered my cards. Things will line up just so. So what's going to happen is that the Firebred, whatever they're called, fire thingies, are going to move forward. They're going to take a shot into the Raptor Riders. Raptor Riders are evasion 2. I'm going to take like some wounds. It will be fine. But what's happening there is that they are moving forward. They're wheeling around like this in order to set up for a big Fire Sorcerer turn immediately after. And because I have my Blooded woven throughout the deck, as soon as the Fireforge finish moving, I draw Blooded, and I have enough cards in hand to, I think, chant Conquest just for the +3 inches of movement, and they march and charge. Now, they are not going to do any damage because it's a march charge, but I'm going to flip ahead just to how this looks. So this is the fight that ensues. Now, they march charge, so there's no clash here. If they get to clash, they could do a lot of damage to these Fireforged. But the important thing is that what we have here is a close combat. And this Fire Sorcerer, staring at all of the Raptor Riders in this direction over here, is only allowed to cast his spells at units his regiment is engaged with if his regiment is engaged in melee. And his line of sight is something like this, which means that he cannot see these Blooded to target them, and he isn't allowed to target the Raptor Riders, which means that his turn comes and goes and he casts 0 spells and I take no damage. And the damage that he could do, and we'll see this next turn, is prodigious. So this is very, very good, and I'm very happy with this play. And if there is like a play that has the chance to win me this game, it's probably this. So if we imagine where they are, they've moved forward into this position here, and then the Blooded have moved to engage, the Warbred are engaged over here. This fight is not very lethal yet, but I'm going to get more shots, I'm going to have some Hunters firing into here, and then the Raptor Riders will finally commit. So the Raptor Riders are going to come into here, and they're going to clash into this regiment, and they will do some damage, and I'll break them, attempt to duel the Sorcerer. I will not succeed in killing him because this Matriarch Queen is not that powerful. Even with Shock, giving her +1 clash for the rest of the round, she's only got 5 attacks. It's hard to kill a character with that, and she ends up flubbing a whole bunch. But we've given ourselves the opportunity. We've worn through some Dark Power tokens, so the Fireforged use, I think, 3 Dark Power tokens to stop the Matriarch Queen's impact attacks. We have a big fight happening here, and the Dragon Slayers will move up to relieve the Fireforged, but it is very likely that I'm going to be able to kill this regiment, if not this turn and not this turn, then next turn, and that takes a very, very dangerous character out of play. On the left flank, the Thanes are going to continue to move forward, and the Slingers are going to continue to back up and shoot. And at this point, we hit a Conquest chant, and we get to do the thing that the Tontorr does. The Tontorr has been given a flurry earlier in the round by the Chieftain. It doesn't hugely need it on the turn that it charges because it has shock from the Chieftain's supremacy, but we do a little bit of damage with the Slingers against the Thanes. Their defense forward is hard to get through them, and then the Tontorr chants Conquest tier 3 with Fanatic bonus for maximum abilities. And it does the thing that feels like cheating when you play Wardrun, which is that it marches 9 inches and then charges 6 inches plus d6, easily makes it into contact, and then does Tontorr things to this regiment. On top of that, it is 4 stands in the zone, so I'm going to easily be scoring this zone once I've killed a whole bunch of these dwarves, and it kill a whole bunch of these dwarves it does. And that's going to set the conditions for its eventual victory. It will take some wounds next turn, but these Thanes are going to be on the way out. The Dragon Slayers are now committed over here. I'm looking to kill his Sorcerer. Everything is kind of going perfectly, and I'm making tons and tons of use of the chance for either mobility or some combat buffs. So going into, I think this is the beginning of turn 5 now, I am on 11 points, having scored in turns 2, 3, and 4, and having killed a regiment, and there's going to be more on the way. So decisive scenario lead, unwounded troops. We will play through the game, but at this point it will be very, very difficult for Tom to recover because he has no force left to allocate down here. And there is just no way for these Thanes to fight this Tontorr. As good as Thanes are, they are just not going to beat this big beastie, particularly not with the Slinger support. Now, one thing that has happened this turn, and which is going to really matter, is that the Raptor Riders have finally moved away from, remember the Sacred Censers on the Predator over here? I think it's 10 inches is interference in version 2, up from 8 in the last edition. I've moved away from their interference finally, so I can't protect this unit with interference anymore, and finally the Sorcerer can cast a spell. Tom wins Supremacy, as he will do for the rest of the game, and the Sorcerer freaking unloads, and it is going to kill, I think 3, it kills 3 of the 4 stands just by Kamehamehaing into the unit. Firewall is a really, really good spell, and he blows me the hell up with it. Between Firewall and just a regular old, I think Fireball is the easiest one to cast, and he does some wounds to this regiment. I am in rough shape. I think he does 2 wounds, so he does a total of, what's that, 17 wounds to this regiment. That's really scary, you guys. I hate that. I don't like that. I don't like the sorcerers can do that. But we will kill him for his temerity. So he's going to go, and then these blooded will activate. They will chant Famine 2, I think. Famine with 2 tokens for Death for 2 tokens for +1 clash. And they will inspire, and they will clash, and that is 17 attacks at clash floor into the flank of this regiment. Boom, away it goes. The Dragon Slayers are then going to charge them, and I think wipe them out, or very close to wipe them out, but Lethal Demise will kill or badly wound 1 Dragon Slayer stand, and you know what? That's fine. These Blooded, they did good. There's a lot of casualties happening over here, but it's going in a way that I'm comfortable with. The magical damage sucked ass, but we are where we are. The Raptors are going to run away at that point. I don't want them fighting Dragon Slayers while they're in this condition. They're just going to pull back here. They're going to unbreak themselves. The Queen is going to start healing them. She has to blow a healing on just to restore 2 wounds to a Raptor, so that next turn she can start restoring stands. But by the end of the game, this unit will be almost back at full health, just by retreating away from the battlefield here. They're not in combat, they just fluid formation, turn around, move, and unbreak themselves. They'll be back later on. On this fight over here, I do actually get to activate these beasties and take a swing. And we will kill a stand of Ballistae before the Internal Automata charge in. Internal Automata do not kill this regiment. In fact, this regiment does not die, but it will die next turn. But they're getting beaten up. The Warriors, realizing that they're going to have to fit through this gap, will reform and move around to here. The Apex Predator at this point makes its move. So when the Warriors move in to basically occupy this position here, next turn, I do a measurement on this, and next turn the Warriors will be able to march past the Inferno Automata and begin contesting this objective. And that means now that the Warriors are a turn away from beginning to score 4 points every turn, it is time for the Apex Predator to go in. Now, I don't think it's going to do any damage. I think it's going to chant Conquest just for +3 inches of movement. Now, it's not a Fanatic, so it doesn't get the full Conquest Tier 3 bonus. It's just going to chant Conquest Tier 1 and go 10 inches over to here and then charge. It's unstoppable. I think it needed like a 3 rerollable, and it's going to charge into and engage the Hold Warriors. Its only goal is to take... If I can kill a whole bunch of them, excellent. But there are too many of them, I think, for it to beat. Its goal is to kill as many of them as possible, sure, but to hold them up for about 2 turns. Because all of this stuff here is light. The Inferno Automata are light, the Sorcerer is light, and the Ballistae are light. None of them score. All I have to do is stop the Hold Warriors from reaching this objective. And if it costs me 190 point Apex Predator, that is totally fine. Otherwise, on this flank, the Slingers are going to move to have a flank shot into the Thanes, and between a short-range flank shot from the Slingers and the Tontorr doing Tontorr things, these Thanes are going to die. They will do some wounds to the Tontorr, but they will not do enough, and they will be wiped out because Tontorrs are 500 points of absolute herbivorous murder. They are truly horrifying. So at this point, at the beginning of turn 6, we can see here, the score is... I actually think at this point, the score is not recoverable. If I run my entire army to... there's just not enough scoring stuff left on the board. With 5 scoring turns, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 left in the game, the best that my opponent can do will be to score... If he blows through the Apex Predator this turn, then next turn he'll get the Hold Warriors onto this zone, which means that they can score a maximum of 16 points. The Dragon Slayers then have to somehow fight their way through all of this. It's not recoverable. The position, the pressure that I've exerted on the scenario zone is too high at this point, even if things weren't looking as dire as they were. Regardless, Tom will make a game go of it, and over the course of this turn, basically, a number of expected things will happen. What is important, the Apex Predator will survive, I think, for now, and actually do quite a bit of damage to the Hold Warrior unit. Eventually the Hold Warrior will break through, but they won't break through until the next turn, but it will survive for a little while. Completely unsurprisingly, these Warbred are going to get annihilated, and the Dragon Slayers will actually make the decision, rather than getting... They've gotten shot once by this regiment of Hunters, And Tom did not care for his Defense 3 Hardened 2 regiment being shot by a unit that ignores Hardened and has armor piercing and deadly shot. So these Dragon Slayers actually just march charge into here, and then I used Conquest to do a 9-inch march around here, and then I charge into the flank. So we basically have a blooded sandwich happening, basically blooded and hunters sandwiching the Dragon Slayers, while the Raptor Riders retreat further away and get onto the objective. The Tontorr will use Conquest Tier 3 to March or Reform March. And this is kind of this is a case for I wouldn't mind having the maneuverability because Reform marching would have been really, really cool. But the Tontorr is going to get over in this direction. The Raptor Riders will begin to heal, and this Magma Sorcerer, once this unit is eliminated, is going to throw a big old nuke with its Magma Nuke into this mosh pit that happens here. This will do a little bit of damage to the Dragon Slayers, but not that much, and it will do hits to everything around it because it's going to use the Magma Eruption. It'll target one of the blooded stands that is here, go pew, and then Magma Eruptions will happen everywhere, and that will do a bunch of damage to the blooded, particularly its damage that won't trigger lethal demise onto the Dragon Slayers. However, what will trigger onto the Dragon Slayers is these hunters chanting, I think it's Famine with 3 tokens, so Famine 2 for Relentless Blows, and then Inspiring and Clashing, and doing just a whole lot of damage. Just as a reminder, Wardrune ranged units, although they have very low defenses, are still Wardrune, which means they have like 5 attacks each plus the leader stand and access to chance. So these Dragon Slayers, I don't think they die this turn, but they get blown the hell up like pretty badly otherwise, as if things weren't going badly enough. And just as a bit of a closing shot, this is not the last turn of the game, but we can kind of end the recap here. This is the beginning of turn 7. At this juncture, I have gone from 24 to 27 points. The Warbred are dead, so Tom is on 4. The Apex Predator will die this turn, and the Dweghom, the Warriors will actually break through to there. So the Dweghom will finally go from 4 to 8 to 10 points. But these Dragon Slayers will be killed, which will put me on 29. And this unit will still be scoring. So the Matriarch Queen is still scoring the zone, so that is 33. And rather than the Tontorr showboating, it's just going to run around to here. I think it actually will kill these on the way through, but the game state's not recoverable at this point. It was not recoverable, frankly, 3 turns ago. Wardrune violence and mobility has paired very well with just a degree of patience in the early game, waiting for Tom to commit his forces, frankly, waiting for Tom to really make some abysmal charge rolls. But the Wardrune capacity to just put force onto a part of the table through the access to chance, being able to just be like, yeah, this unit's really dangerous right now, or more importantly, this unit's really fast right now. The fact that you can just get explosive speed out of the Wardrune anywhere on the table, just being like, yeah, I'm just going to I've got a death token and a famine token, that unit's just going to chant and have plus 3 speed on its first march this turn. Hot damn, that is so good and so easily applicable. It was a very complicated, it's a complicated mechanic to learn because it's expressed in the rules in a really complicated way. But once you get it down, honestly, I really liked it. And in particular, I really liked it because it changed the way that the game it changes the way the game incentivizes you to organize your strategic stack, your deck, your command deck, I think it's called, sorry. Where with every other faction, if you're not spires, you are just trying to order things in a way that will let you enact some tactical plan on the battlefield. If you are spires, you are trying to see the freaking future and figure out what is going to happen, 6 activations before it does, and making sure that combo X can trigger with combo Y, and the Ferromancer can do this, or the Biomancer can do this, and you have to play this whole ridiculous Machiavellian minigame. But with Wardrune, you're trying to keep a beat, and as long as your list is reasonably good and reasonably self-sufficient, and you have maybe a couple of duplicate cards, and importantly, you have some characters in the stack, you can just order your cards in a way that keeps time. And that's really cool. It's also where a weak point for Wardrune emerges, and veteran Wardrune players will tell you this, that being under pressure as a Wardrune player, having to potentially falter your tempo can really suck. If a unit dies at the wrong time, and you stop hitting a beat that you'd planned to hit, things can go very badly. But that's where the characters come in. Something like the Chieftain on the Tontorr is, if the Tontorr dies from 3 wounds to dead, things have probably gone very, very badly anyway. But like in this game, the Predator, the Matriarch Queen, and the Tontorr, I could always more or less rely on to be alive once the Matriarch Queen got out from under the explosions of the Fire Sorcerer. And that meant that I could weave those characters in. And because characters don't chant, or don't battle cry, terminology, sorry. They add chant markers to the token, and if you're full, they'll just replace a token with they will replace an existing token with one of theirs. But they don't battle cry, and because they don't battle cry, if your plan involves needing the full 3 chant markers for a unit that's going to activate, but you're worried something ahead of it in the chant will die, then you just put a character in there. You put 4 cards ahead of it, one of them being a character, the last one being a character, and that way you'll know that you'll hit tempo. And it maybe isn't the most efficient, but it's pretty safe and it's good, and it basically meant that once I figured the mechanic out, I never missed a chant, not through the entire game. And it was its own little mini game. It was super interesting. Had Tom not failed some of the charges that he failed, I suspect that probably I would have been in a worse situation. I would have been under more pressure. But yeah, as it was, it felt super interesting, super clean. It is very rare, very, very rare indeed to see Dweghom take a decisive loss like this. But given this was my first outing with Wardrune, I super enjoyed them. So big, big thanks to Alex for letting me borrow their army. I will definitely, if it's available, I'll happily borrow these Wardrune again, particularly once they get some Slingers and Hunters assembled, because their army looks awesome. It's a very simple color scheme, but it just looks fantastic. You can see it on the table here. It's an absolute banger. So yeah, this was just a Friday night game, but it was a hell of a game. I really enjoyed it. A decisive Wardrune victory, and as always, look, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.